What's going down, people? How you doing? TK coming at you, talking to you again about personal finances and decisions that you make. What's important to you? Just listen to Jeezy. Anyway, rap artist was singing a song and he's like, yeah, you know, white people get money, they'd rather buy a business. Or white people get money, they don't spend it. And then he was like, well, I get money and I'd rather buy 10 gold chains. So think about that in terms of your mentality. Think about that in terms of what makes the most financial sense and where you want to be in life. It's just that simple. Everything's about your decisions. So I told you guys a story in the past about history. And I think I'll tell the story again. So in the beginning, the history of money goes back to goldsmiths. When you go back to before America became America and we were a part of the English, people used to take their gold to a goldsmith, and a practice came into play where people kept their gold at the goldsmith, and the goldsmith began to issue receipts for whatever gold was on deposit at the smith. Well, it became obvious to the goldsmith that people weren't going to come back and claim their gold. They were happy with their receipts or their claim for gold on deposit. So as long as the goldsmith was able to issue claim checks for gold, he was able to charge interest on those claim checks, and people began to use the claim checks as actual money instead of the physical gold on deposit. So the goldsmith got wise, or got greedy, or got the bright idea that, hey, why don't I just issue more receipts than I have gold on deposit at the bank? Hence the term fractional reserve banking system. That's how it was born. Because as long as people didn't run back to the bank to claim their gold, hence the term run on the bank, then the banker felt comfortable issuing out more receipts than he had gold physically on deposit. So the system itself is only sustainable if everyone who has gold on deposit doesn't ask for it, because the banker or the goldsmith knows that he issues out more paper than physical gold in his vault. So for those of you who don't know, that's the history of the fractional reserve banking system, and that's the basic principle behind quantitative easing or printing money. It is the commercial banks who take a deposit check from the Federal Reserve banks, and that deposit check acts as a reserve. Now, it depends on what study you do, because it's not really known, but it's thought to be 10% reserve. Some people say 5% reserve. Some banks are quoted to have no reserve. But let's go with 10%. You know, some places say 20%. But whatever the case may be, between 20% and no percent, there's a reserve that a bank holds on deposit from the Federal Reserve. And through charter, a bank is allowed for every $1 to create 9 more dollars. So that creation of balance or checkbook money is done by issuing out a loan or by investing in some sort of, I don't want to say commodity, but some sort of financial instrument, security. So one of the two ways, either issue out a loan or investing in a security. And that is what adds to the money supply within the United States, or typically within the fractional reserve banking system worldwide. So for those of you who didn't know, didn't study, that's a brief synopsis and firm understanding of how our monetary system works. So keep in mind that when the bank issues out a loan or a security, it comes with interest. So you have to deal with the creation of something out of nothing plus the interest, and you have to maintain this balance so that you're not over printing or over creating beyond the reserves that you have on deposit at your bank. And you also have to understand that checkbook money is part of the monetary supply. You know, once you fathom all of that and you put it together, you realize that the house of cards is designed to fail, because the money that's invented out of nothing through loans that comes with interest, what happens if the bank exceeds its reserve limits, or what happens if people make a run on their deposits? Cyprus happens and the system collapses, just like the Goldsmith system. You know, if you have a run on a bank and people wake up to the Ponzi scheme, then the pyramid falls apart or falls in on itself. So what that means is that you should have a backup to fiat money, because every dollar is created out of debt. The physical money in our society is backed by credit, and every dollar that's created is created through debt. That's why it's typically called an IOU, because you actually owe them, and the usury and interest that they're charging you on that money they printed out of typing some numbers on their computer screen when you took out that loan. So realizing that, and then making different decisions. Okay, physically back your assets with gold, silver, and Bitcoin, because those are separate systems. It's not a part of fractional reserve. Although gold and silver is still manipulated through paper instruments and derivatives, it's still separate from fractional reserve banking. And that's what's important. So I wanted to give you guys some value information for the people who don't study as much as I do. But you can back this information up on YouTube if you watch Mike Mahoney, or you can pick up a book and read. But the most important thing is understanding that within the fractional reserve system, you can make it work on a private level for yourself. In other words, there is a process that allows you to become or participate in quantum easing on a personal level. And, you know, essentially you set up a trust fund, which is a wealth protection fund, and you're issued a debit card to that fund, and you're actually allowed to use the tax-exempt money from your trust fund to stabilize your life. And that's what I try to help people do. I really try to help people to advance their future. I try to help people to just get beyond this debt slavery that everyone else is in. You know, if you're serious about changing your life, establishing a trust fund, getting involved in gold, silver, and Bitcoin, 4 best things you can do right now in the 21st century. It's definitely what I'm doing for myself, and the fact that I'm willing to help people do the same damn thing means that I care enough to share the information. What you do with this information, guess what? Not my responsibility. So be blessed, be empowered, definitely be about change, and no matter what, make sure that you are positioned